So 284, today we're talking about Stanley Cup playoffs and the previews that come with that. So today we have the start of the Stanley Cup playoffs. It's going to be very exciting, and it's going to be really exciting to see how everything transpires and how everything pans out. And we got a lot of unique matchups this year. A lot of the Canadian teams are in. We have five Canadian teams in this year. And this might actually be a legit chance for those teams to actually make it and be able to have a chance to advance on closer to the Stanley Cup final. And when you talk about the Canadian teams, those being Winnipeg, and then you have Edmonton, Ottawa, Toronto, and Montreal all in that mix. So it's going to be a fascinating season for Canadian teams in playoff hockey, and it's good to see a lot of them back in the playoffs too. And so we'll just start with each matchup in the first round. I'm not going to talk about my whole bracket. I'm just going to talk about first round matchups and who I think could advance. And we'll start the West. So we'll start with Winnipeg and St. Louis, two really good teams. Obviously, Winnipeg dealing with Gabe Vilardi out, Nikolai Ehlers is out. I think that's a big blow to them right now. I still think they can steal some games and win a lot of games without those two. It's just more a matter of if they're gonna be able to get going right off the gate offensively. I think you can rely upon a lot of those players. You're gonna have to rely upon a guy like Cole Perfetti to elevate his game, especially with Ehlers out. You're gonna have to rely upon Alex Iafallo to elevate his game, and he played really well on that top line. He was a fill-in on that top line for Gabe Vilardi. Gabe Vilardi is closer to day now. Nikolai Ehlers still week to week. I think with the St. Louis team, obviously Jordan Binnington in playoff mode is a different Jordan Binnington, and you can never count him out of the playoffs. I see this going Winnipeg in seven. I think even though St. Louis has been playing super hot throughout the season, still a really tough matchup, still a really stingy matchup, and Winnipeg has a lot of bigger-ish style defensemen on their back end. A couple of them being more shutdown minded, and I think it's just going to be a good chance that Winnipeg ends up taking this one. As for Dallas and Colorado, I honestly, if you would have asked me this like 2, 3 months ago, I would have said and leaned a little bit more towards Dallas. I think now it's going to be Colorado. And I don't know. I'm still debating whether or not I want Colorado in six or seven. But Jason Robertson's out. Yes, Tyler Seguin is back. But there's just Dallas hasn't played well defensively as of late. And their goaltending has been a little bit iffy as of late. That concerns me a little bit heading to the playoffs. And I don't know how they're going to pan out. And we've seen this Dallas team, obviously they're a premier team, one of the best teams in the league. But I just don't know, especially with how they've been playing as of late, how it's going to translate into the playoffs or if it's not going to be a big deal and they're just going to reset and what's going to go on there. I think Colorado has a lot of offensive firepower. The three new additions being Brock Nelson, Charlie Coyle, and of course Martin Necas have been dynamite for Colorado down the stretch of the season, and the offense is just there for Colorado. And this is a team that looks really similar to that 2022 team they had. I think there's a lot of elements that really stand out and are going to allow Colorado to take advantage of this series as well. Vegas versus Minnesota. Honestly, I have Vegas in five in this one. I think this is a heavily skewed matchup in terms of the analytics as well. But just looking at Vegas and how they play defensively, they're bigger minded defensemen, how they have a ton of offense. They have Jack Eichel, who's a potential Selke candidate this year. Just a lot of firepower up front, really good at defending the middle on the back end. And obviously, their goaltending is very important in that as well. So I just think when it comes to Vegas, it's really hard to count them out. And they're kind of the sleeper in the West, but I don't really see them as a sleeper, especially them being defending cup champions. And then the last one. This is actually gonna be this is a really tough one for me. I still don't know who I'm gonna choose. I still have Edmonton right now, but it depends on if they're healthy. So it's Edmonton versus LA. Obviously, fourth straight year they're playing each other in the first round, and Edmonton's advanced in each one. And it's actually the first time since I believe 2006 that Edmonton starts the playoffs on the road. So that's gonna be an interesting situation to see how that plays out for them. I don't really know how Edmonton can deal with their injuries. Matthias Ekholm's potentially done for the playoffs. Yes, it's hard to count out and count against and not pick the team that has Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid. I just think that there's going to be points in the game where you're going to have to defend, you're going to get outworked, and those defensive players are especially key. Like Matthias Ekholm's a guy who can play a shutdown game, he can play a complete game. He's very important to this team, yes, but I just think it's going to be interesting to see how Edmonton adapts without him and how that situation plays out. I it's still a tough one. It's really a toss up to me because if Edmonton's not healthy throughout the series, I could see LA taking this one. And LA's been playing really well down the stretch. One of the most effective teams since the NHL trade deadline and since Four Nations, and one of the higher scoring teams. And plus, you have Quentin Byfield playing really well. You have Kevin Fiala playing really well. And I think those two can do some damage. And we'll just see how things play out there. As for the East, the Ottawa versus Toronto matchup. This one's an interesting one. I think Toronto's a different team than we've seen in years past, leading up to the first round. Yes, Craig Berube's changed some of their details. He's changed some of their forechecking. He's changed some of their mindset. I think and Craig Berube, when he came into a team last, he won the cup with St. Louis. So who knows what can happen there? I don't know how they're going to fare in the first round. The Leafs are the one team it's like you can easily count against them in the first round because it's the same story with them each and every year. They usually end up losing in the first round. I think this is another toss up. I could totally see I think this is going 7 games. I don't know who to pick between the two. I have Ottawa right now, but I don't know who to pick. I could totally see a situation where Toronto ends up advancing, maybe easier than we all thought, but I don't know. And Brady Tkachuk could do some damage in the playoffs. Tim Stützle, Jake Sanderson, those guys could really elevate to another level. As for Florida, Tampa, I am leaning towards Florida in 7 in this one. It's hard to count out the defending champs, and I think with Matthew Tkachuk back, you're gonna have Aaron Ekblad back eventually. Well, you don't have officially Matthew Tkachuk back yet. I don't think he's supposed to be back for game one, but he's supposed to be back in the series, is what I mean. And I just think with those two guys back, you're going to get easily acclimated. Matthew Tkachuk's the heart and soul of this team. You need him, and I would say you need him more than you do Ekblad. You need both players, but you need Tkachuk more than you do Ekblad, especially with the Seth Jones acquisition. I think Matthew Tkachuk, they just need him right now, and this is the time of the year that they need him the most. So I'm still taking Florida in 7. I am not counting out Tampa Bay though. Tampa Bay, Brandon Hagel could really elevate to another level this year. And Jake Gensel's a playoff performer. Braden Point, it's going to be interesting to see how he does as their main center. And Anthony Cirelli, of course, Yanni Gourde's a playoff player. Like, this is a team we can't count out, and they're still really good. They're still really deep, and they still have a lot of depth all around. So I'm not counting Tampa Bay out by any means. I just see Florida. It's just hard for me to count against Florida, and I see Florida taking this one at 7. For Washington, Montreal, I have Washington in 6 right now, but I wouldn't be surprised if Washington takes this in 5. I think this is a smaller-ish Montreal team, and I think that plays a role, especially come playoff time. And yes, they're highly skilled, but mm, Washington has a lot of bigger players and a lot of players who can easily go around you, especially if you're a smaller player. Like think Lane Hudson defending Alexei Protas, like that's almost impossible, right? And Montreal has a few of those players who kind of are up against and up around that size. So. I Montreal's obviously a good story heading into the playoffs. I just don't see them lasting too long. Washington's gonna be interesting because the last few weeks of the season they didn't play that well. I think they're gonna be fine though because the OV stuff is behind them. I just wonder if they expended too much energy on the OV stuff and now they have the playoffs right around the corner and they have to still play. But I honestly I'm not too concerned about this matchup for Washington. I think there's going to be a little bit of a transition period, but I honestly think game one's going to be important for Washington because it's going to really we're really going to see what type of team Washington is because we could talk about who had the best regular season record and who had the best standings in the regular season, but come playoff time, none of that matters. So Washington's one of those teams I'm really curious to see how everything transpires there. And then Carolina, New Jersey. I currently have Carolina in five. I think I'm going to change that though. I because I thought about this. Do you have in years past when New Jersey made the playoffs, the question mark was their goaltending. This year it's not really their goaltending. You have Jacob Markstrom in net. You have Jake Allen in net. Those are two guys that can play really well in the playoffs and actually steal you a few games if they play really well, if they're on their game. I still see Carolina going, I would say six or seven, but I think New Jersey can goalie Carolina a few games. And New Jersey has a better goaltending of Carolina, so that's also of note. But I just think this is a situation where I don't necessarily think it could go either way. I think this leans more towards Carolina, but I wouldn't necessarily want to count New Jersey out too early because they have a and even with Jack Hughes out, they still have some players who can make a difference and be able to make an impact. And I just don't know how they're going to sustain their impact throughout the series as well.